Dogs.
Good morning.
My parents love that.
Hope everybody's doing well. We're really excited to introduce 4 wonderful librarians from Penn State who are going to, one, introduce themselves, 2, talk about the research agenda, and also talk about how they relate that to publishing opportunities. This is something very new for us and something very exciting, but on behalf of WU Libraries, I just want to welcome you all. We're really, really happy to have you here. So hopefully you'll enjoy your meetings. So let's get started. I guess we're doing this alphabetically. So Leah.
Hi, Joe.
Yep.
Glad you could come.
Hello, good morning. My name is Leah Gant, and I'm one of the diversity resident librarians at Penn State. I just started in August. I'm really excited about this opportunity, really happy to be at Penn State. And I've already, I think, have had some really great opportunities to look at research and to have opportunities to publish. So I guess I'll just talk a little bit about my experiences so far. My background is in international studies, and I'm really, really interested in international populations. And Penn State, like many higher education institutions right now, like we're seeing this a huge growth in international students. I'm working right now in the assessment department, and I'm actually going to be working on my first book chapter with some co-authors with our research team. There's several members from the assessment department and also one of the reference and instruction librarians who works in library learning services. And what I'm looking at is a sense of belonging for international students in the library. I have the opportunity to work in focus groups in University Park, which is one of, I guess, I don't want to say, well, it's one of the campuses.
Kind of the main one, right?
Also, was able to also go to some of our other Commonwealth campuses, one in Abington and one in Harrisburg. We picked those specific, the specific campuses because they have larger amounts of international students. We also try to be very diverse in regards to looking at different students. So we had people from like Asia and Canada and the UK. So, but we're just trying to, I guess, get more of an idea of what these students want. And it seems like everybody wants the same thing. They want to have a good environment to be working in, like the space. They want to have, I guess, have good library personnel to reach out to contact, to have that help. But like there were definitely times where I guess our Commonwealth campuses, they want more of what we have, but I think we all want the same thing. You know, like the students just want to feel a sense of belonging, and they want to just, I think it really was just, the space was huge, having good library personnel, maybe the opportunity of having like 24 hours at all of our campuses like we have, for example, at University Park. So we're just trying to figure that out and then get like all this, I guess, do a little bit of data mining to get more information so we can, I guess, provide recommendations and just suggestions on how to improve that. I also have had the opportunity to work in our library learning services department, and that was my first rotation. Sorry, I should explain that first. I had, with our program, we have 3 different rotations, and I started first in library learning services, but I've been working currently in assessment. One of the things that was really important for me for library learning services to have, I guess, the opportunity to try to work with was outreach, and that's where our outreach coordinator is housed. We had a very great event called the Human Library that happened in February, and I was able to work on the committee, but also be a participant, talking about my experiences as being a plus size person, and it was great because we're really trying to, I guess, look at inherent biases that people have and just kind of, we were just talking about that, but and I get a little nervous talking about that, but it was a great experience, and it was also just an experience for me to work in a committee that was like completely around the university. It wasn't just the librarians working there, it was also people from different departments on campus. So being able to see, I guess, how people work together, and yeah, so that's kind of what I've been doing right now. I hope to have more opportunities to look at, in particular, looking at international populations and international students. My background is in international studies, and if I can have more of an opportunity to publish and just do more research on that, I definitely want to. So that's about it for me. Next semester, or I guess in the summer, I'll be working in social sciences, and I hope I'll be able to work again with international topics, in particular, like international relations or international studies and government studies. So, yes.
Question. So in working with some of our international students, especially like in our engineering program, we've seen these, I guess, issues with like plagiarism and just basically this bridge that kind of needs to be gapped between what's acceptable in different cultures and what we have here. That's something you guys see, and if so, I'm sure you do. How are you kind of combating that?
You know, I definitely have read about it, but I haven't really had the opportunity to work in that yet. But I have seen it. Yeah. I know we definitely have a site, like we have definitely librarians who work on citation guides and working with international students. And I wouldn't even say international students, I would say all students, to make sure that they're not plagiarizing. But yeah. But I haven't really worked in that.
It'll be interesting if you see that in assessment, because that's something that we're kind of starting to look at our school too, like with some of our academic honesty or academic dishonesty policies and things like that, and how they're translating that to students from different cultures that just, in some cultures it's acceptable and it's actually a good thing if you take somebody else's work because you're giving them props, right? So, and just kind of bridging that gap. So it'll be neat to see if you write something.
Definitely. I definitely would like to look into that. Definitely.
You talk a little bit more about your book chapter. How did that come about?
Honestly, when I was working in library learning services, the head of that department just sent out like a call for proposals. She just forwarded something onto me, and I reached out to the head of assessment, and I was like, maybe we could look at possibly doing a book chapter, and we just applied, and things worked out really well. So we've been working on that. I'm actually going to be like the head author in that, so I've been working quite a bit on that. I'm working on the first draft. So, but I think it's really just people just forwarding out these calls. You know, we're going to also be having a poster presentation for this at ALA. Okay. So just people just sending out information. Hey, you might be interested in this. So I think we have a pretty good culture about that at Penn State. People are really trying to push for people to have more opportunities to, especially for like junior faculty. That's one thing that the head of assessment always tells me. He's like, you're going to make sure that we're trying to, you know, just push you out and make sure you're doing these cool opportunities. So, yes, ma'am.
When you're writing your chapter, and you talked about going back to your study and that and looking at international students and what they want. So you mentioned, you know, sort of a sense of belonging being important. Are you looking into what creates that?
I guess, but do you mean like within our actual library, or just like the sense of belonging, just like as a definition, just in general?
I guess maybe both. I'm just kind of curious. I could see where that could be really useful for libraries to like get a sense of what are specific things you can do.
Yeah, definitely. No, we definitely are. We definitely have made like an insight page that look at what all the students are saying. We're trying to get like a common theme.
Okay.
And also just doing other research. Like I have done some research with looking at higher education in general, with this sense of belonging, not just looking at international students, but students like maybe students of color, students who might have like an accessibility issue. Like just we're looking at all types of sense of belonging and trying to get more of a definition about that. And then also looking if we can find research about international students in libraries. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for listening.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
All right, Jose.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jose Guerrero. I'm the other diversity resident librarian at Pennsylvania State University, so there are two of us. I'm also very happy with my experiences so far at Penn State. I'm very happy to have such wonderful colleagues, and thank you again for West Virginia University Libraries for hosting us today and tomorrow. My background, I actually came to librarianship from the rare book trade. So prior to this, I worked for a couple of antiquarian booksellers in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I was exposed to lots of things about books that I had never really considered before, I guess. And it was through explaining my work to a friend of mine that actually the idea to kind of venture into librarianship came about, where he kind of described, some of these things you can do as a librarian and sort of, do like provide a service to certain users. So that sort of informed a lot of my work. I actually began my rotations last year when I started in August along with Aaliyah. And my first rotation was in special collections. And while I was there, I was kind of looking into different gaps in the collection that have sort of come about for various reasons. But one of the things I found out actually was an area that didn't seem like it would be a very strong place for an institution like Penn State to collect, but it turned out it had a really strong collection in Peruvian literature, Peruvian modern literary fiction before World War II. And so I became very interested in this collection, which was kind of strange, right? Yeah, it turned out that there were not only books, there was an entire library that belonged to the former vice president of Peru. There were a series of election posters and ephemeral political handbills. There were a bunch of pamphlets. There were all sorts of really interesting, unique material that was sort of interdisciplinary in its appeal because it had sort of a mass media component. It had a very strong literary history component. And sort of the way I sort of explored this collection was sort of using these skills that I had developed in the book trade, which is sort of attending to the bibliographical qualities of the books, right? So all the books in this library were in a particular binding and had particular shelf marks. And so I quickly realized there was no way to easily access all these materials. And so sort of one of the, this isn't exactly a publishing sort of opportunity that's come about from this, although I think that will sort of follow. But one of the things I became interested in doing is creating an engaged scholarship program around this collection, right? Because there's sort of a need to access this really comprehensive, interesting, unique collection that really can't exist and doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, not even in Peru. So I'm interested in creating a project that helps students develop bibliographical literacies that help you sort of identify the sort of what it means when a book is in a particular binding. And that might be something we take for granted because we see so many books. And in fact, the idea that a library has books is kind of like passé by now, right? Like we're more interested in other kind of newer flashy things. But I think there are a lot of really real interesting consequences that arise when we pay attention to these things. There are certain sort of social codes that are embedded in books themselves, which we can only really sort of think through if we have the skills necessary to identify them. So that's sort of one of the things that I've been working on that sort of come about as a result of my rotation, my first rotation in special collections. And it's sort of also been informed by my second rotation, which is in library learning services, which is, has been this sort of teaching and learning component to this research project, this idea that I can bring in an undergraduate student and sort of train them in how to pay attention to certain sort of shelf markings, certain sort of, marked fields in the CAT records that sort of may provide clues as to how to sort of rebuild and recover this library, which has been dispersed since it was acquired in 1969 and sort of since had sort of various collection management processes. But this project, I mean, it might sound a little like navel-gazing and sort of self-gratifying, but actually I think it ties really well into what Aaliyah was talking about, the sense of belonging project, and sort of how well do students see themselves reflected in the collections, right? So I think having collections that are specifically and topically about global engagements, right, and this sort of internationalism. The collection itself has a great deal to do with internationalism because the collector himself was a Pan-Americanist. So he adhered to this ideology that saw the Americas not just as like the U.S. of Americas, but the Americas as an entire hemisphere. I think there's a lot to grab onto as far as like what it means to be an American or to inhabit America, and that is sort of accessible by handling this collection physically, handling these materials, a very sort of visceral engagement with library services. And I think with a service that maybe, has sort of been relegated a little bit to the margins, right, for various reasons. And again, I think there are various publishing opportunities that can come about that. I think tying your interests and your research projects to particular professional organizations is important in making that leap from sort of an idea into a research agenda into sort of a publication opportunity. So again, this is sort of through my work in the book trade where I found out of a group of librarians. It's an organization called SALAM, which stands for the Seminar on the Acquisition of Latin American Library Materials. So like they would be all over this, right? So that's like a perfect venue. And again, it's not necessarily a publishing opportunity, but it's a presentation opportunity. So I think one of the greatest bits of advice I've sort of received from my time at Penn State, from sort of getting informal mentorship from the people that I work with on a daily basis, has been to sort of try out your ideas in multiple venues. So if you think you can write a paper about something, try to also think about putting that paper into a poster format, or try to put it into like a talk format. And that really sort of expands the available opportunities you have. So definitely presenting that salon is something I'm very interested in. I'm a member of the Rare Books and Manuscript section of ACRL, so I think looking, when you do your ALA membership, like, looking through those like list of different groups that are available to you, that might also provide some interesting opportunities to see if those conferences are more applicable to your research interests. Another big part of Penn State's initiatives, people are looking right now a lot at what sort of hasn't been historically collected. So this research sort of into institutional collecting history has been very informative, because I found out about a number of programs which have existed historically, which I think provide a really strong precedent for continuing to develop collections in those areas. An example would be the Hispanic Library Program, which existed from 1969 to 1994, thereabouts. And it was a really interesting program which brought a lot of this material to Penn State, actually. I'm very interested in diversity as it relates to collections, and as it relates to people who actually do the collecting. And so, again, this isn't exactly a publishing opportunity, but with a couple of colleagues, I'll be on a panel at RBMS in Iowa City later this year, which I think is an important sort of step in my own professional development, and also in thinking through some of these ideas, which have appeared in a number of different ways so far. Next, over the summer, I'll be rotating through the metadata and cataloging department. And it's interesting how sort of all these three sections, three parts of my rotations at Penn State have really kind of sort of slid into one another, right? Because, exploring this collection and special collections led to this interest in producing engaged scholarship opportunities for students. And part of this, a major component of this engaged scholarship project is to basically enhance access to this collection, which is something that has to happen with the catalogers, right? It has to happen in the market fields, right? This is something that when you add these enhanced descriptions, it's going to help your researchers access this library, which is previously sort of floating around, not really, accessible in its most meaningful form. I think materials, I think, are important and stand alone really well, but I think it's through these engaged scholarship opportunities and through this project to enhance descriptions that we're really going to see it shine, and we're really going to see it make the library connect to international communities. And I'll be interested to see how this sort of pans out. There's a new position at Penn State, a global engagement librarian, and I know that person's reached out to institutions specifically, so it'll be interesting to see how this sort of pans out in that context as well, whether we get more interest from researchers in Latin America, or perhaps students in Latin America who are drawn to Penn State for this particular collection. And so that's something that maybe I wish I had looked at more closely when I was applying to my undergraduate institution, trying like, what does a library have? Like, so thinking about that sort of as an engine for attracting students, attracting scholarship, and attracting researchers, I think is another sort of benefit of the work that my residency has really allowed me to do, and which I'm very grateful for. I had no idea I kind of had an idea because when I looked at the position and I looked at the Penn State, I saw, oh, they have the library of this like a really popular, really famous Latin American literary critic. So that was one of the things I looked at when I applied to this job. So I had an idea I'd run into it, but I had no idea it'd be such a robust possibility. It'd be sort of bursting at the seams with opportunities to publish, write, not just about sort of collections management processes that happen in libraries, but also about something that I'm very topically interested in, that I find very sort of personally fulfilling and very gratifying. So, yeah, as you can probably tell, I'm very deep into the special collections world. It's very much a passion of mine. And you can probably see the difference, right? So two people sort of starting at the same time that sort of went in very different directions. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have had about anything I said. Yeah.
I totally get enhanced descriptions, and I'd like to hear more about engaged scholarship, about your experience and what programming specifics and maybe what worked best with that.
Sure. Yeah. So that component of this hasn't quite sort of come to fruition yet. There'll be an intern coming that I'll be working with, who'll be working under me actually, in the fall and spring semesters, 2017, 2018, so for the next school year. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that they'll be doing it's going to be sort of a mix of shelf reading, to kind of locate all the copies of books that are in this person's library that are not captured in the catalog, and making sure that it's noted in the catalog, hey, these books are in this person's library. So it's also going to be about collecting data about the books. So the books will be described in the spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet will be sort of manipulated through various program software like OpenRefine. And so it's sort of the idea there being to sort of show the libraries as a place where you can broaden your research skills, right? Because I think working with technology is something that a lot of humanists it's not really on the radar, it's not the first thing they think about. So understanding that you can treat physical materials as data as well, and that you can manipulate that data using freely available software like OpenRefine, I think is a big step, is one of the major components of this research. And I think creating and curating that kind of data will be a major part of this, will be one example of, like concrete example of how this engaged scholarship will play out, right? Like creating and managing a lot of information about a library this library, I didn't mention, but this library is supposed to have something like 14,000 books. So we'll see how many actually surface, right? But that's going to be a huge, beginnings of a bibliography, right? Of a major, I think, publication. Ultimately, I hope so. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question exactly.
Thank you. Yes.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Stuart Blaine. I'm the Rubric librarian here, and I'm really excited to hear your talk. This is really terrific, and you and I are on the same page in so many different areas. And I know you're coming to the collection tomorrow, so I really look forward to chatting with you some more. But I also wanted to know a little more about your engaged scholarship program. But I love your term social codes, and I do a lot of education in that area with classes that come in, and I sort of frame it as coming from an artifactual approach. And I really feel like you cannot understand the text without knowing all the cultural moments that are around that. So I'd love to hear more about what you think of that.
Oh, geez, I got plenty to say about that.
You and I are twins separated at birth.
You guys can geek out together tomorrow.
I'm so excited about this.
It might interest you also to know. So I'll be doing sort of like I guess it's like an illustrated talk in this Penn State. So this is one of the sort of opportunities I think where instruction and teaching in the libraries can really talk to special collections in a meaningful way. So I'll be sort of hosting a bunch of instruction information literacy librarians like Emily Rimland in the special collections library, and sort of showing them how you can see these social codes in the text, but also in the containers of the text and how bindings signify in significant ways. And actually, this idea of a social code being embedded in the book is an idea I borrowed from Michael Suarez, who's the director of our books club at the University of Virginia.
I know Michael.
Yeah. So he has this great talk, if you want to know more about that, called Ecosystems of Book Histories, which is available on YouTube. You can just, search it. It's a very interesting talk, I think it's particularly relevant in our sort of social political moment, where I think the formats and the platforms in which information has been disseminated have had such a profound impact on things like elections and sort of popular opinions. And so I think attending to those things in early printed books and in printed material sort of sets up students to understand them how they play out in the digital realm, right? So like how an advertising leaf in a book is sort of in conversation with link padding when you look at the Guardian's website and they have an ad that they want you to click on. I think there's a lot of crossover. I'm still in the process of exploring that more, but I'm very keen on all those possibilities.
Wonderful. That sounds great. I look forward to talking to you more about that tomorrow.
Likewise. Yeah.
I don't know how Penn State is organized, and so when you talk about the learning team, I'm not sure what that means, but I'm thinking about this engagement piece as well, and thinking about your opportunity to work with subject librarians. So are they part of the learning team, or are they a separate entity, or how does?
So when I say learning team, I should be more specific. I'm referring specifically to Library Learning Services, which is a department that sort of manages a lot of the library instruction. But yes, the subject librarians are, of course, they're not sort of officially in that department, but they do a lot of library instruction, of course. And as far as this particular project that I described, I am working with a subject librarian who has a subject expertise to sort of really see a lot of things that I would probably miss, and to help guide this student researcher who will be joining the libraries in the spring and the fall. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of subject librarians will teach sort of introduction to university discourse classes, which at Penn State they're called English 15 classes, and they also do the upper level subject specific classes. So yeah, I think they are yeah.
And you probably said this, and I missed it, but who's the group of students that you're gonna do who are going to do the enhanced descriptions and engaged scholarship? Like what group of students is that?
So it's going to be a single student will get this.
Okay.
It's through an internship is how it's all.
Internship, okay.
Yeah, and so it's going to be a single student, but they'll probably be pulled from the Spanish department or from the College of Liberal Arts, probably somebody interested in book history or in the arts of the book.
I applied to be a research mentor here for a freshman work study student, and yet to see if I'm going to get. First, I need to be approved for that, and then interview 3 students and pick one for a kind of library research project.
Oh, wonderful!
So it's kind of interesting to see there were options because I'm already looking for options in case that doesn't work out. Now that I'm so attached to the idea of having somebody to work on.
So I don't want to talk too much, but the Engaged Scholarship, it's come up a couple of times. It's part of a university-wide initiative around Engaged Scholarship, and it's kind of a moving definition, but the definition that we seem to be kind of rotating around right now is these are any kind of out-of-class opportunity for students that reinforces in-class learning. So it's internships, it's service learning, it can be paid internships or non. So there was some movement a year ago to actually require this. There was a report that went to our faculty senate to require this, and it didn't pass the faculty senate. But there's a lot of interest in kind of better defining it and better defining how we track and give credit to students and fund these opportunities. And we're entering into a development phase. So we're hoping in the libraries to create more internship opportunities. So if we can raise money around internships, this is one way we feel like we can really align with what the university is doing.
I don't want to take up too much more time, so I think I'll pass it on to our next presenter, if that's okay. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Tom Ransfelder. I'm a reference and instruction librarian at our Penn State Mount Alpha campus, which is South Central Pennsylvania near Gettysburg. So it's a fairly small library, a lot of different things, but reference and instruction is my primary goal. I also have a lot of other interests. One of the things that I've been following for quite a while now is the open access movement. There's been a lot of change, a lot more change to come. It seems like every day there's something coming out around open access, scholarly publishing. So that's definitely been fascinating to watch and something that I'm interested in. The business models and policies that might come to institutions. A few years ago, my dissertation research was centered on different open access perspectives and angles in libraries. At Penn State, a few years ago, within our library faculty organization, we passed our open access policy. I was involved with that. Wasn't necessarily an easy process. First time it came up, it took a little bit of discussion and it came up. First time it came up for a vote, it was delayed. We pushed it back to later in the year. Came up again, voted no, got voted down. There just wasn't enough understanding. People had a lot of questions that weren't addressed. So we went back and talked about that more. Next spring it came up. That passed with pretty strong support. Wasn't unanimous, but we had pretty strong support. So now the library at Penn State has an open access policy, which basically says that library faculty give the university permission to share a copy of their work in our repository online. To do that. But also the library faculty are asked to make a copy of their work available at this time already through our Scholarsphere database or by publishing in open access journals. Beyond the university, the Faculty Senate passed an open access resolution. It's been about 2 years ago now, which basically says open access is good. You should try to pursue that if you can. It wasn't quite as strong as our policy in the library, where it's more of an expectation. The university Faculty Senate took the stance that if there are opportunities out there, you should explore that. It's a good thing. So now we're at the point where we think about what comes next. Provost came out with a task force on open access, looking at where we can go next as a university. How do we implement these policies? So that's where we're at. Some of the challenges. Another piece that goes along with that is the idea of the author funds. We have an author fund in Penn State. I saw that West Virginia has one to help pay for open access journals when that's necessary. So that's one thing that we're doing. As far as research and research interests, one of the things I'm starting to do a little bit of writing on now is the idea sort of around these author publication fees and funds, and how we're moving from subscriptions to taking the money and paying for articles which can be open for everybody to read. Right now we're doing that on an individual article basis, a few $1,000s to open up one article. But are there ways that we can be more efficient with that and get more bang for our buck? Right? So there are other bigger projects out there where we commit a couple $1,000s and support other larger projects. Knowledge Unlatched is an example of that, where more of a sponsorship model than a subscription model. So you get a bunch of libraries to contribute a little bit of money, and then it opens up work open access. They get the university versus publishers to approve. So I'm trying to look at things like that. So how can we be more efficient and shift from subscriptions to maybe more of a sponsorship model? People say, but it's going to be expensive. How do we pay for it? The old way is expensive. The money's already there. We're spending the money to support scholarship, but can we be more efficient? So that's one of the things I've been thinking about lately. I can do a little bit of writing on that. Some of the other projects I've been involved with in Pennsylvania, I've been involved with the Pennsylvania Library Association, and a few years ago we created an open access journal called Pennsylvania Libraries Research and Practice. So I'm the co-editor of that, and we're into our year now. And that's hosted through the University of Pittsburgh. They have their library publishing operation. They host about somewhere around 40 different journals through the open journal systems. So I'm interested to hear more about your digital publishing. So there are definitely a lot of opportunities for libraries to get more involved with digital publishing. publishing side of things. As far as taking the work that you're doing and looking for publication opportunities and outlets, whenever we talk about this at Penn State, one of the things that I like to recommend a lot, there's a book, it's by Walt Crawford, does a lot of writing around libraries, which talks about library publication. And the title is First Have Something to Say. So make sure you have a clear message and a purpose for writing. Don't just sit down on the page and feel like I got to write 10 pages on this topic. So try to find that gap in the research. What's something that's missing that you can contribute some original ideas to, and then write down your message and share it. A 3-page article, great. Takes 15 pages. Okay, that's great. Just get your message out there. One of the things that I remember from the research methods class I had back in library school, something the professor said about coming up with research topics and contributing to the knowledge. Try to identify your nagging curiosity. You always talk about your nagging curiosity. What's that one thing sort of in the back of your mind that you always wonder about? Why do we do things this way? Or how could we do this better? What would it look like if we did things different? Take that and just try to turn it into a question, maybe a research question, something you could explore. Go out and see what other people have written about that or around that. If nobody's written about it, then wide open. Write an article, write a book chapter, do presentations, and help advance our field forward. So those are some of the things I've been working on. One of the other projects at Penn State that I've been involved with quite a bit is our online reference. We use SpringShare's LibAnswers, LibChat, and that's across all of our 24 campuses, about 150 or so library employees. We did about 4,000 to 5,000 transactions this semester. So it's interesting that talk about that as well. Yes.
You spoke. I didn't catch the rest of it. You talked about knowledge something.
Knowledge unlatched.
Unlatched.
It's still fairly new, but they're starting to gain some momentum. Knowledge unlatched. But their model is they work with publishers to identify the publishing costs for a book. So the publisher says, we'll publish this book and make it open access, but we need $20,000 to do that. And then Knowledge Unlatched goes out and goes around the libraries and says, okay, we need to raise this much money. Would you be willing to contribute $50, $100? Once they meet that target goal, they get back to the publisher and say, we have the money to publish this book on open access. It's sort of a crowdfunding.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah.
How many books have they flipped to open access? Ballpark.
Well, they had their first round, I think, was around 40 or 50. So that's one of the best examples, but there's other projects out there that are starting to follow that model. A lot of experimentation going on. So it'll be exciting. Yeah.
For your author fund, how many faculty have participated in receiving?
It's been sort of a pilot program and sort of a quiet base. We didn't really go out and advertise it too widely, so it's more word of mouth.
It's like ours.
Or so.
I'm sorry, say that number again?
About 1,000.
Oh, that you said 1,000. I was like,
It's limited to $2,000.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be.
So do you see where that's going? So you mentioned that's a pilot now. Are you getting to the point where you're sort of seeing what is happening in there and what you think you want the future of it to be?
I would like to see us spend the money that we have the best way that we can get the most for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think spending $2,000 to $3,000 for one article is going to probably be a lot.
Yeah.
Probably do better than that.
Yeah.
And there was an article in CNRL News where Johns Hopkins, they shut down their author fund.
I saw that. Yeah.
The demand was far greater than what they could afford to keep up with. It wasn't sustainable.
So I'm interested in your open access policy, just the differences between the library faculty one, which is expected, and the university wide, which is like, it's a cool thing. So can you talk a little bit more about why it kind of came to pass the way it is at the university level and if you expected that to change?
That's a good question. All right, so the one that we passed within the library follows the Harvard model. So Harvard was the first place to do this, and a lot of other institutions followed on. And it says that library faculty grant a non-exclusive license to the university to make the work publicly available as long as it's not sold for profit. So the university could technically take anything that you write, any scholarly articles, make it publicly available. Right now, nobody's going around and searching your hard drive, pulling out articles and throwing them online. But faculty are asked to make that publicly available through ScholarSphere. Policy allows us to do that. And most of the publishers will allow you to do that as well. They just don't want their PDF copies in your institutional repository. But you can take your final version and just do that. The reason we didn't go for that on the university level is just because Penn State is so large and complex, so many different colleges and campuses, and we had a hard enough time getting it through the library faculty. It would have been, we just weren't ready for it at that point. So the Senate resolution came up just as a way to introduce the topic, get people talking about it, thinking about it a little bit. And when it came up, it passed unanimously. There wasn't a lot of discussion question. Everybody pretty much went along with it. I think there is some interest in the university now at trying to take that a little bit further. And we push for something more than a resolution. Not sure that's going to
Do you think that's leading to any conversations about tenure and promotion? I mean, that seems to be a big clump that gets mixed in with the open access and how faculty are rewarded.
I don't see this as two separate things. I recently came up for tenure. All my stuff is open access. I published in Journal of Academic Librarianship, put a copy of the article in the repository. So it's in a closed access journal, also available open access. You can do that. So I don't see them as two separate paths. You can
do you think your campus faculty feel the same way?
No. Different disciplines have different ideas of that. In the business faculty, they have their list of publications they need to be in these journals. They don't need to talk about anything else.
Yeah.
Other places like science and physics, they've been open access for longer.
And what about the Journal of Academic Librarianship? Was that all understood from the beginning? Did you bring it up with them, or is it part of their policy, to have both? It's okay to have both, or?
A lot of the publishers, if you look at their standard contracts for Journal of Academic Librarianship, I know the reference librarian with Taylor and Francis, it says right in their standard contract that the author retains these rights. You may post this version of your article on your personal website or in an institutional repository. So there's no discussion that has to take place there. So it's built in.
Because I was in just another one, a library one, and they were like, no, we own this completely. So.
Different publishers have different stances on that. With our open access policy in the library, some of the thinking goes, lawyers have looked at this, not at State, but Harvard, they've written about this, said that if the author transfers the right to the university, it says they can share a copy, or you submit it to the publisher, that takes precedence. Hasn't been tested in court yet. So you can do that. If the publisher really pushes back, we have an opt-out clause in the policy that says you can, so you don't want to do it, opt-out. It's in your article, or you can give the publisher complete control and ownership. That's what you do.
I just to add, like this happened last week, a book chapter, they sent us the license and there was nothing in there about placing a copy in our institutional repository. And we asked and we said, we have this open access policy. And they said, this is Elsevier. They said, oh yeah, we can change that. And they actually changed it for all the other chapter writers. They changed the license for everybody based on that. So we felt really awesome that they made that change. So I think a lot of times we just forget to ask sometimes, but sometimes, yeah, like Tom said, they're just not they're gonna stand their ground and not want to change.
Right now our policy is not enforced. Nobody's asking anybody, have you put it in repository? So I'm pretty sure not all of our faculty put their published work into ScholarSphere, but I haven't really checked. But I know a lot of them are doing it. I think we're heading in the right direction. It just takes time. Turn it over to Emily.
No one's here.
So, my name is Emily Rowland. I'm an information literacy librarian, and I was going to talk mainly about digital badges, and I can bring them up online if you guys would prefer, would want to have a visual of what I'm talking about. But just so I have a sense, are you familiar with digital badges, micro-credentials at all? Some are saying yes, some are going like this. Okay.
Bring up
Yeah.
visuals.
Okay.
That's my
It'll
vote.
take me a minute to log in. Do you guys have 2FA here? Two-factor authentication?
For our own thing, but I don't think it'll affect you.
Oh, I have to get it.
Well, and we don't have it. Why? Actually, we're only testing it here. I have it. Not everybody does.
So why don't I do this? I'll try and talk and do this. But this has been my area of research for the last about 4 years. But I came to Penn State in this position about 11 years ago. Recently got tenure a couple years in 2013. Are you guys on tenure track here? No.
So faculty status without tenure.
Got it. So with that, there's sort of an expectation to do some publishing. And so coming in my research agenda was roughly technology applied to library services. But I'm in the teaching and learning unit of the libraries. So that's always been sort of my passion. It's kind of partially why I got into librarianship. So digital badges was like just a natural extension of a lot of my interests. But I didn't, start out doing it. But it's something that I got exposed to from our, we have like a teaching and learning group within our IT department at Penn State. I don't know if we have something like that here, but they're called the Education Technology Services. And I partnered with them a lot on quite a number of initiatives. They run our media commons that's inside our knowledge commons, that's inside our library. So, they're been really good partners for us. And they offer a faculty fellowship every year, and I applied to that to get started on the digital badges. And so what that was over the summer they supplied me with like a team to help me kind of jumpstart a research project. And when I heard about digital badges, I thought they were like sort of a natural thing for teaching information literacy. And I can show you more about this once I log in. But that fellowship, like I said, really kind of helped jumpstart my research in this area. And we also have something called an early career librarianship at Penn State, which is, I held it for 3 years. It's a librarianship that you have for 3 years, and it comes with some funding to help do different things within the area. Mine was in the area of learning innovations. So I was able to hire a graduate assistant, for example. She was really able to help me take this fellowship, what I started in the fellowship, and take it kind of the next level. And so during that time, we created 10 information literacy badges, which I'll get into at Penn State. And one thing I'll say is, if you think you have a good idea or something you're really passionate about as far as publishing or research, just stick with it. Sometimes it takes a while to pay off because if you look at all the sort of trend forecasting, like digital badges were supposed to take off in like 2 to 3 years. In like 2012, starting in 2012, like New Media Consortium and Horizon Report, all those kinds of things. That was their projection. It's just a projection, but we didn't really start seeing uptick in them or real interest in them until I would say this past years when we really started getting some leverage and some momentum forward with them. So I'm really glad I kind of stuck it out with digital badges because for a while there it seemed like it was just really slow adoption, but we're really seeing the fruition of that now. So just to explain a little bit about digital badges, I could do a whole presentation about this, but it's an online or a virtual representation of a skill or learning that someone has done. So a lot of people equate them to Girl Scout or Boy Scout badges because I think that's a reference point a lot of people know, but it's really taken it to the next level because it's completely online, and because you can click on it, they might look kind of similar to a Girl Scout or Boy Scout badge, but because you can click on it, you can see a lot of information about what the person had to do to earn that badge. You can see who issued it, when they earned it, the actual evidence they submitted in order to earn it. All kinds of like to say the metadata is baked in with the badge. So that kind of takes it beyond the traditional analog badges. They're being used as a way to kind of fill in gaps for students that might not have learning in certain areas or a way to show off their learning in particular granular areas. So if you think about a transcript, I don't know what your transcripts look like, but ours look very similar to, I was like this analogy, a Walmart receipt. So it's like an abbreviation of a course or an item, and then, you know, a grade and maybe the number of credits or something like that. Like that doesn't really tell an employer or somebody else what you learned. So badges are a way to kind of show off your learning in a particular, more granular area. So we thought this was a great way to showcase information literacy skills. And I'm just looking here. Actually, I don't know if this is going to work because I have no cell service. I did not get it.
I was gonna say, sometimes texting works even when nothing else does.
Yeah.
Well, I have like one bar here, and over there I had none.
Oh.
This is a better spot.
Perfectly designed.
So when we created these, we didn't have the framework yet, the ACRL information, but we knew it was being developed. So we still had the IL standards to work with. So we based them off of that. We've updated them to be sort of aligned with the framework now that we have the framework and it's out. But they're divided into kind of, there's 10 badges, and then they're kind of grouped into families. And so we have like 3 badges about searching. We have 3 badges about kind of better identifying the research skills, like evaluating the credibility of a website or something like that. So
I've never done a phone call. This is 2-factor authentication.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future.
it's really selling it.
Yeah.
It's coming to us. Some of us are testing it now, and they're going to roll it out to the whole campus.
It's kind of like PayPal, right? Isn't that what you have to do with PayPal? That you have to-
Yeah.
Yeah, and Apple now I think has it too, and yeah. Yay.
So a couple years ago, Penn State built its own digital badge platform, but you don't have to do that. There's services like Credly is one that's really popular. A lot of schools use that. So that if you're interested in that, you can just go to their website. But we have our own system, and so this is where all our badges are housed. And if the student earns some and leaves Penn State, you can now export them to something called your Mozilla Backpack, so that you can like take them with you. And LinkedIn is actually really interested in badges, and so now there's a way to export them to your LinkedIn profile so that you can show them off that way. And now that Microsoft's bought LinkedIn, it could be more interesting in that. You know, they might sort of take it further. But so this looks a little different because I administer badges, but you know, it'd be similar look for a student. But this is just an example, so you have a sense of one of our badges, Savvy Searcher, refining your research. You would come into the system, add the badge to your queue. There's some introductory information here, including about how it aligns to the ACRL standards and framework. And then you have these, in this case, 6 steps to complete the badge. And so many of our badges kind of follow the same framework, where we ask the students to kind of access their prior learning to see what they know or think they know, do some activities, and then they kind of end with a reflection about what they learned in that badge. So from this, you can see generally how it works. You start with step 1, and the fact that I did that, it's over here and it's approved on the state. Step 2 is been submitted, but not verified by me. In this case, I'd be verifying my own information. You can pretend that I'm a student, so this is what they would see. And then if they haven't started it, it tells them like how long they would need to complete that badge approximately. And then they would, you know, click where they left off. And, here's the instructions, and here's where they would submit their evidence. So most of the time they're submitting some type of text, but they're also able to upload screenshots or other files. But that's basically how we have it structured. You can save your evidence to come back to it, you can submit it, and that's when you come to, in this case, me or another librarian to review the evidence you submitted. And we have grading rubrics to determine whether or not the student did the step correctly. And based on that, we would either approve it and they would get credit, or we would reject it, we'd come back to them and they'd have another chance to try it again. So that process could go on, hopefully not, but it could go on endlessly until the student, does what's required of them in the step. And then once they do all the steps, they would then earn the badge. And they would have this badge available to them to export and do this other things. So we're trying this in a couple different classes. The main one I've worked with is we have a speech requirement. All students have to take a speech class. Which is pretty awesome, I understand. But I work with them, and I have some instructors that are interested in using the badges to supplement the students' skills. So the students do the badge outside of class. I evaluate the evidence they submit, and then I work with the instructor to help her when she completed the badge. We've also had a lot of online students using them as well. My colleague has been using them a lot with online learners in a similar way, but not quite the same. So that's another way we've been successful. So that's a really good overview. But that's primarily my area of research. One thing we did to kind of jumpstart it was we worked with a survey research company, which I didn't really even know existed before somebody told me about them. But if you have some funding, like if you get some grant funding or something along those lines, and you want to do like a survey that's administered more on a national scale, so you have a larger group, something like that, you can work with these type of companies. You come up with your questions or whatever you want to do, and they basically go out and find participants who meet that criteria that can answer your survey. And then I think they are compensated a little bit, but the survey company, their fee to administer that survey for you. So we did that related to badges, and we wanted people that were like hiring employees in different sectors across the U.S. So we were able to hire that company to get 100 basically HR representatives to answer our survey about digital badges. We were interested to see if employers were interested in seeing these digital badges on applications at job openings. So that's something I would just, like I said, I didn't know that service really existed, but if you're looking to do something, beyond your campus or, like I said, at larger scale, those type of companies do exist. They were great to work with and really helpful and allowed us to do that. So,
are you still collecting the results for that survey?
No, we finished that, but something in the back of my mind I like to do is maybe like rerun it, a couple years later. Like that was early on, it was like January 2015 is when we ran that. So, no, sorry, 14. So I'd like to see, like, has your mind changed? Just to give you a sense, like those lawyers were really receptive to badges. They just didn't know much about it at the time. So it'd be interesting now to see, that we have sort of pick up an interest, whether or not it's different.
You published that.
Yes, we published that in College and Research Library. So I'm sure if you just realize it. But that was just relating that to publishing. That was one where I think we tried twice before we got an acceptance. So if you are looking to publish and you think you're sure you have to, don't be afraid to try different outlets or try, take the feedback you get. The feedback you get from the review process is really valuable. It'll make your article much better. So I know a lot of people feel like sort of reject them personally when they don't get it accepted, but it's really not personal at all. And it'll really make the research and the writing much better. So that would be one thing I would say, to just remember that. Try to co-author too if you're not wanting to go it alone. I've had great mentors at Penn State with the mentoring program, but I've also had a lot of informal mentors and just colleagues that are wanting to write together. That can make it more difficult in one sense, but it also is sharing the load a little bit. So a lot of my publications have been co-authored. So that's another thing that's really helpful too, is if you can find somebody who wants to partner with you. I've always had good experiences co-authoring. I just know it's 12:01, so I don't want to go too long, but does anybody have any questions or?
Yeah, so it's not really a question. This is cool, and I think it's great that you're doing work to see how this kind of can be related to employment, because that's so much of the emphasis on student success is getting a job when you're done.
Right.
So you kind of talked about it a little bit before, but are you guys looking at how you can possibly expand this to other programs to kind of create specific badges that can be linked to the employment opportunities in the future? Because I mean, library skills are related to all of that, obviously. But
yeah, like I said, there's more and more interest we're seeing on campus. So one example is health policy and administration is looking at using it for sort of their incoming students, but somehow tying it to their certification process. Like I'm not familiar with their certification process exactly, but they want to kind of build the badges in as a way to get there. So that's one example. And I think the way we structure our badges, I feel like they're useful in a lot of different disciplines. It's like, I'm sure we definitely want to make some more specific ones, but a lot of them can be used in a particular discipline. So I think we'll get there eventually, but yeah, we're kind of focusing on sort of that foundational information literacy skills and foundational level courses.
So in addition to sort of like the transactional element, like you do this, you get the badge. So does it, like in your experience at Penn State, does it sort of provide like a unique, like another way to have a conversation about some of the like teaching that you're doing, like between the student and instructor?
Yes. So I don't have any current badges going now to show you, but the students that submit evidence are actually, I hate to sound surprised, but the evidence they submit, very thoughtful, very robust. Like they put a lot of thought into it, and it creates this like interesting relationship with me. It's also interesting because sometimes I meet the students in those courses, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I go in and do kind of a one shot, and some other cases it's replaced the one shot. So it's interesting to have those two. But you do get to hear their answers in a lot more depth than you would in a one shot or something like that. So it definitely has augmented what I feel is my relationship with them. For the better.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. If you have any other questions, feel free to be in touch. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right? Yes. Well, thank you guys so much. I think you guys did a fantastic job. And if you wouldn't mind, if anyone has any additional questions, sharing your contact information so people can contact you. Thank you to everyone who showed up. This is really great. Enjoy the rest of your day.